Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl, and it's a Love of Lagers episode from four brewers that have fully embraced the traditions to the style and are working to have modern conversations in the space. You'll hear from Bierstadt Lagerhaus, Bagby Beer, Heater Allen, and Cohesion Brewing in just a moment. But first, mark your calendar for May 9th. That's when Camp Rauch Beer happens at Brewers Brewing and Blending. It's happening during the Craft Brewers Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, but you need not be a brewing professional to attend. Starting at 4 p.m., come enjoy smoky delights from a dozen of the country's best Rauch beer brewers. Plus, M. Souter is going to be doing a Pints and Panel pop-up shop, and there's even going to be some live audience podcast recordings. You can learn more by checking out This Week in Rauch Beer. Just search for the Facebook group, or you can follow on Instagram and Twitter at TW Rauch Beer. A reminder, please go visit allaboutbeer.com for original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. You can listen to shows like Beer Travelers, Brewer to Brewer, and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. This show and all of the work we do is supported by you. You can visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer to help keep the content fresh. And a reminder that a few bucks goes a long way to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. So thank you for your support. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising on this show or any of the All About Beer podcast, please email info@allaboutbeer.com. It was a beautiful weather day in Duluth, Georgia last weekend as Good Word Brewing put on its third Little Beer Festival. Todd DiMatteo, who you've heard on this show, as well as Steal This Beer, hosted a celebration of low ABV lagers and ales from top-notch brewers from around the country. And I'll point out that they've already set the date for Little Beer 4. It's going to be Saturday, April 13th, 2024, and I cannot recommend this fest more. It's a perfect setting in a charming town just outside of Atlanta. And if you're serious about great beer and the people who make it, be sure to be there next year. That's Little Beer 4 on Saturday, April 13th, 2024. And it's not just beer drinking at this fest, but there's also some education. So under the shade of a large tree in the middle of the town green, I was able to sit down with four brewers of note to talk about their love of lagers and the steps they are taking to create delicious beer. This panel includes a lot of familiar voices: Lisa Allen of Heater Allen Brewing and Gold Dot Beer in Oregon, Jeff Bagby of Bagby Beer in California, Ashley Carter of Bierstadt Lagerhaus in Denver, Colorado, and Eric Larkin of Cohesion Brewing, which is also in Denver. Here's our panel conversation.
Great. Welcome to you all. This is like the round of applause time for all of you for being here. Ashley, I know you hate the question of, our lagers having a moment, and I know your answer if it's a 500-year winning streak.
Only 150, but,
But
samesies.
Is there a general excitement about lagers across the U.S. right now that you feel exists? I'm not saying like it's going to replace IPAs. I'm not saying that it's going to like in the craft space or anything. But is there an excitement that 11 years ago when you were first getting into this that you're surprised about now?
No, because everybody realized it costs too much to not make them. You need people to drink more beer in their place. Us as brewers, I think is a very unique panel that we're all owner brewers, is that you want to have something to drink in your own place. And lagers in general, I think it's low alcohol beer in general, but lagers in general, brewers, they take technique, which we're all very passionate about doing our job very well. And we want to sit down at the end of the day and crush, 4 or 5 beers with our friends and still be able to function. And I think we also need that for our customer base too. It's not gone. Long gone are the days that there's going to be a sour only brewery where people sit and drink 4 beers. It's just, that's not sustainable. So you need something that people can sit and sip on that is a little bit lower flavor profile, etc.
Is there something to be said about the ownership structure, Lisa, of being able to make the beers and not having to answer to other people? Like the beers that you want without outside investors saying, well, how come you haven't done a hazy and everybody else is doing it, and let's jump on the latest bandwagon and, kettle sour this? Or is there something to be said for ownership and controlling your own destiny?
Totally. I think so. Because all of us as brewer owners, you're making you're making brewer and beer led decisions, whereas you're not necessarily, I mean, you want to do what's best for your company financially as well, but that's not the number one thing. So yeah, you're making those important decisions that are based on beer, not just based on, making money as a business.
Jeff, having worked at other breweries before opening your own, though, when you were now in control, when you were now running the place, did something change for you as a brewer with the beers that you wanted to make and the beers that you wanted to put literally your name on?
Well, the last place I worked, Pizza Port, I was there for, like I said, you said a little over a decade.
Yeah.
But I was lucky to have owners there that pretty much let us do whatever we wanted. And so I kind of already had that option.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice because I also didn't really have a budget. But
It's
opening
nice when it's other
opening
people's
my
money.
own place,
Yeah.
there was also restrictions in regard to production time and tank space and things like that at Pizza Port. So when I built my own brewery, I thought about some of those things. Oddly enough, didn't think about. I wanted to make lager, but I didn't know to the extent that we would be. I'm very excited that we are. But yeah, having the option to do, like, at Pizza Port, I only made a couple of lagers just because of time and space.
Yeah.
Constraints. So having my own place, it was like, no, we're definitely going to dedicate some time and effort into putting in and making some of these beers that I hadn't done before. And just, yeah, for me, it's interesting. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I heard some very prominent and well-known California brewers say, well, you've got to listen to your customer, and you got to do what your customer wants. And I'm a firm
Lisa
believer.
and Ashley are both shaking their heads.
I'm a firm believer in that. That's not true. What I want to do.
Ashley wants names right now so she can go to somebody's house and kick their door down.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised to hear it, especially with the beers that and how long both these places have been in business. But I just don't. I mean, I care, but I don't. Like Ashley said, I want to make what I want to drink, and I want to work on and focus on what I like about beer. And for us, that's classic, true to style beers, not just lagers but ales as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I get to do, and that's what I want to do. And quite honestly, it may be the death of our business. I don't know. But yeah, in all seriousness, I enjoy that part of it, and I enjoy hopefully teaching a customer about something they may not have known about before, rather than going, oh, you want hazy IPA, you want me to throw Twinkies in my mash tun, whatever. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to typecast cities too much, but San Diego had led the hop conversation in the U.S. for so long with pale ales, with IPAs. Did you find that people were refreshed that you were turning out lagers as well and sort of giving them a back-to-basics approach to beer?
It's funny, when we opened, we didn't make an IPA on purpose.
Yeah.
And we had people come in and go, where's the IPA? And turn around and walk out of the
People
building.
were mad at you. I
They were
remember
very,
talking to you
very
about that
angry.
at some point.
They
Yeah.
were very, very angry. And I was like, well, no, hopefully you have enough. Like, I heard somebody say this a long, long time ago, and if you call yourself a beer drinker, then you should drink all beer, and you should know about all different types of beer and appreciate them, or at least try them. Yeah, you're going to find things you like and you don't like, but if you absolutely refuse, then come on, like.
Yeah. Speaking of all types of beer then, so Eric, have you found when people come to Cohesion and you're able to talk to them about Czech styles, what are those conversations usually like? Because, people, think of lager and they have probably an idea in their head, but it is so regional and it is so, country specific, and, there is some innovation that's happening in the space, but to be able to focus on, one region for your beers, how do you lead those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with a lot of education for the staff because they have to be super knowledgeable on it. But honestly, we're in a city that we're fortunate to have brewers that have kind of focused on styles before us. Bierstadt, Hogshead, some of the West Coast IPA producers we have in town. We have people that have focused on a style if not exclusively, they've put forward a really great example of it. And so I think a lot of people in Denver are sort of used to a place that has more of a focus, and they're more accepting of things like, hey, I'm rolling in with this very specific focus. They're like, okay, I've seen this before, I can get on board with this. But I mean, we also at Cohesion purposely try to make a situation where our customers want to ask questions. So we lean into things that are a little bit confusing to people, whether it's the Czech language or, you know, the how much foam we pour in the beers, having
the pronunciations
the
as well.
all that.
Yeah.
So it's I kind of think it's our job to make our customers have questions and then have those answers ready to go. And that's our job to give the staff the capability to answer those questions and have a conversation with them about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we do it, and, you know, what makes it something that's interesting for them. So we purposely try and kind of confuse people a little bit when they walk in the door.
Ashley, did you have to crawl so that Eric could walk? Like when he's saying that, like, you had set the stage and Hogshead had set the stage, were people questioning you in Denver when you all started with what you wanted to do?
Yeah, including you, John, man.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that true?
I remember the first time you came in, and then you came in again the next year, and you were sitting down with Bill and I, and you're like, I really worried about this place, and I thought it would not exist the next time I came in, because nobody can just do that. You said that.
Yeah. That sounds like something I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So you
There's
said, like,
probably a recording of it somewhere, and somebody will send that to me.
Secret pocket recordings.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, people said that you just can't do that. Like, you have to, like Jeff was saying, you can't, you know, why don't you have this? Why don't you have that? And honestly, people love being told no. I found that out.
Yeah.
And it is a hard road to hoe. And I would not say that we started it. You know, we had examples from Jack's Abbey, etc., and we just decided to go even harder at that. Continue to make a very small amount of beer, which is helpful, right? Like, if you start to get too big, you do have to start listening to different parts of this market. But for the most part, we can't make enough beer to satisfy everybody. So we just have to find the people that want to know more about us and to have, like, kind of a strong opinion about it. I love as much when people love what we're doing as much as I love people who are annoyed or baffled by it. Like, we need both of those people in order to be successful, because if you don't find the people who are annoyed or don't like it or only want IPA or don't understand why we don't have Hefeweizen, right? You won't find the people that will go to bat for you and understand exactly what you do. And so you kind of have to go hard at one thing. You know, I Allagash, you know, you worked at Allagash, but listening to, reading an interview from him, being an inch wide and a mile deep is how I'd like to be every day.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think it was hard at first, but I'm so glad to see more people doing that and more brewer-led places that are only making the things they want to make and not necessarily listening to kind of the muffled outside out there. You know, as soon as you start listening to those people, they're just telling you what your competition's doing. They're not telling you what you're doing.
And is it even fair, though, when I hear you say that, and I had a conversation at the Good Word bar the other day about breweries that brew with intent, that know what they want to be, and they can be flexible if necessary, but are coming at this with, you know, this is our vision, and people will come for our vision because we believe in it, as opposed to pandering to, you know, what the market is seemingly saying that people want, kind of thing. This festival, I think, is a really great representation of brewers that are doing it with intent, that have a really strong sense of self. How important, this is a jump ball for whoever wants to jump in, but how important has that been for your breweries to get you to where you are right now, of what Ashley was sort of saying, of being true to yourselves?
I mean, I'd love to hear what Lisa has to say to this, because she kind of inherited it in a way, you know, and kind of not late to the game, but you were a wine person beforehand. So, like, for me, I always wonder, like, you know, how did you decide that? Yes, absolutely.
You know, it's kind of one of those things where, I mean, spoken on this before, but, like, brewing the beer that, like, you want to drink, and at Heater Allen, we've never brewed an IPA before, which was also really weird for the Portland area where we're located. And, you know, and we did, as Jeff was saying, have people that would, like, walk in and be like, oh, you don't make an IPA, peace out. And you just have to be okay with that. For me personally, even though I was in wine, I also was always a fan of beer, and like a lot of people when I started drinking, started getting into like the hoppier styles and stuff. But then you just come to appreciate kind of, and this is for me with lagers with my dad when he started the brewery, and like it's more nuanced, and I think coming from the wine perspective, that's what I liked about it. It doesn't like slap you in the face, a Pilsner. It has, these nice hop and malt character, and if you do that really well, it's like comes together to be this really beautiful, harmonious thing. And yeah.
Jeff or Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think echo and emphasize a lot of what Ashley said in terms of finding your people, and like to me, it feels like leaning into something in the way that we've done. We find people that are really excited about it, and like having those people that are really, really excited about it does make a difference. And I think that customers can tell when you're being even if you have a wider program, the customers can tell when you're being intentional, when you have that passion behind it. It comes through. No one can really put their finger on exactly what it is sometimes, but I feel like I can go to places and drink beers and talk to people and tell like, yeah, you really, really care about this beer and care about this style and want to represent it really well and are passionate about it. And I think leaning into one style for me has helped me kind of develop that passion and nurture it a little bit and keep it, I think alive for customers as well. But it's that mile wide and an inch deep. We heard that at Allagash. Every company presentation that we did, Rob Todd would repeat that phrase. So I heard that probably 20 times while I was working there. And he would say, yeah, we were spread out over too far of a territory, and we didn't have enough customers deep in a territory, and that was a problem. And we fixed it, and then things got a lot better. And it definitely stuck with me as well, like finding a market, finding an area, finding your customer base, and just drilling down into that people and in that territory has been, I mean, we're the youngest company, between the 4 people up here, but it's definitely been something that I've noticed that people, they resonate with that passion, that intentionality for sure.
Yeah. Jeff, I want to talk about tradition a little bit, where you're talking about true to style, and where that fits in 2023, where there's breweries that embrace chaos and embrace no rules, and there are drinkers here, and it's nice because I feel like there's a chance for folks who are just turning 21 to walk into a festival like this and to drink traditional ales and lagers and get a baseline sense that I think when we all were coming up that we were very fortunate to get. Whereas if you go into some of the cities right now or you go someplace else, all you're going to get is marshmallows or God knows what in the beer. It's like, oh, we brewed this with Cocoa Puffs or, whatever. And that's fine if that's what people are looking for. But when you're talking about brewing to traditional styles, how important is that baseline education in your mind? And what do you want the other
for a customer or for me? Like I'm
well, I mean,
about,
obviously for your sanity, I can't imagine you doing anything else. But I think more for the
No, I mean
for the long term of beer, right? Because it's not just beer competing against beer now. It's hard seltzers have joined the conversation in a big way. RTDs have joined the conversation in a big way. Brewers have long embraced spirits, after hours and all of that. But that's encroaching in as well. Wine, people are cross drinking these days, or not drinking at all. So
I don't know.
I don't unpack that. I just threw a lot at you.
I've been processing a lot of what these 3 just said too, and how that fits into kind of our vein or doesn't. I'd like to. We're definitely deep, but we're a lot wider than an inch.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's a good thing. Sometimes it probably isn't. And with their focuses on being that inch wide is great. For us, I don't know. I tend to have I want all the things, and I want to dive into those, but they all just seem to have tradition and classic. Even if it's spirits or if it's food or if it's whatever it is, that's kind of what my focus is. And I like to travel to the places where these things came from or come from or where they're happening and learn that way. And once I started traveling, my brewing knowledge and sort of ideas about what I wanted to make just kept expanding because I kept learning more. And I hope that, like, Eric was just saying that someone who, whether they understand and know beer or have been drinking craft beer for 30 years or 30 days, I hope that they can taste that when they come into my pub and have a beer and go, whoa, even if it's something like cream ale,
Yeah.
And no, we don't put vanilla in it, like another popular brewery
there's
down
no
the road.
lactose in a cream ale.
So
weird.
You can see it and it happens, and when it does, it's the best feeling. You get a customer that's just like, oh my gosh. Sometimes we've had German customers go in and drink our alt beer and go, this reminds me of home. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
You've had
brewing
that,
this.
Ashley, as well, right? And Lisa, I imagine you have as well. And
And
Eric, you told me a story, right? Of you've had folks come from the Czech Republic and just,
that exact phrase
tears in their eyes.
Yeah, I haven't seen tears in the eyes, but this
That's
beer,
why facts don't matter on this show, apparently.
It's
Yeah.
like tears of pain
This-
for
Yeah.
most of us.
Oh, man.
This beer tastes like. I mean, I've also had Czech people tell me that my beer is crap too. So, but when the Czech people come in and say like this beer tastes like home, this place makes me feel like I'm at home, that it is really rewarding. Like it's really nice to have that, especially after, like Jeff said, traveling and experiencing it in the place makes such a huge impression on all of us, I think, when we travel to those places. And to have someone who has that as a part of their upbringing come in and say that, it definitely means a lot. It's what we often say that's, the highest compliment that we can get. So,
Ashley, how important is tradition?
I think, okay, so it's not, I wouldn't say it's a complex answer, but I think that it's more about intention than about being, for me, tradition just for the sake of tradition, right? Like, we have science now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. We should keep doing that. But you shouldn't, it's making quantitative or, qualitative decisions instead of quantitative decisions. And so what makes sense? Like in our brewery, I really love the act of actually making beer. So to me, I have a bunch of reasons why I do decoction, why we use a flotation tank, why we use lager tanks, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you don't understand why you're doing that, then there's not really a point in doing it, right? You shouldn't just take tradition because it's, traditional and that's how it's always been done. You should look at the parts of that make sense, and of course owning my own brewery is a really great thing because I can just say yes, no, what I want to do, what I don't want to do.
Yeah.
So taking the pieces of tradition that make sense for us, and also I don't think that is the end all be all. You have to actually examine why you're doing something. Does it make the beer better? Does it make it taste more like you want it to taste? And maybe better is the wrong word, but does that process make my beer taste the way I want my beer to taste? Or am I just doing it because some old dude in a book said to do it? Like, there's a very fine line in there. And I guess it's, for me, it's about the beer making process and constantly learning. I'm not opposed to learning new techniques or learning about new hops or things like that. But again, just cutting maybe, like fixing some of the things about the way we boil, right? I think that using a steam boil system is better for our beer because I think it helps make it last a little bit longer. It doesn't age it as fast. But also, do I think decoction matters? For sure. So it's kind of finding this fine line between the two things and what makes sense for our brewery and what makes our beer taste like our beer.
Lisa, what's the fine line for you?
I would say that I'm probably a little less. I mean, we do make very traditional lagers, or at least attempt to. It's kind of our version of what they would be like. But I also am, like Ashley said, like looking at science and how can you make this process better. I think it was this actually, my partner Kevin told me this, that I think his first job was at Checkanut in Bellingham, Washington, also makes fabulous lagers.
Yeah.
And the head brewer there was Will Kemper. And still is.
It still is, yeah.
Still
He's
is.
still with us. He's
I don't
still
think
there.
he brews anymore.
No, but he hangs
still
out.
is
He
it.
hangs
Still
out
is
quite a
it.
bit. He's yeah.
But he said he's like too often brewers are trying to think outside the box when what you really need to do is spend more time thinking inside the box. And so that's kind of, I really like that because it's kind of like, because I want to be in this tradition, and so how can I make my processes better within those traditions and not by adding like lactose or enzymes to my beer, just doing things maybe a little bit better than they were done in the past, and looking at current traditions and past traditions, and
Yeah.
making the best beer I can that way. I don't know.
Eric, you're nodding along with this.
Yeah, I think a lot of what they're saying is stuff that I've thought about too. So it's it's nice to hear. But especially with what Ashley's saying about tradition is important. I think really important for us at Cohesion. But I've also traveling to the Czech Republic, and I mean when they first made Pilsner Urquell, they didn't know what yeast was, right? We didn't have an idea of what they literally have a phrase, "Debus Jesti," which means God give us luck. And that's what they would say before they brewed, because they're like, I don't know if this is going to work or not, right? I mean, that's where they started, was like, hey, I hope this works.
Yeah.
And it still is an important part of their culture. They still use that phrase a lot. But yeah, we're at a point now where we can buy yeast that is a single, colony and pitch it accordingly. And it's a very different era to make beer in. So we're definitely guided by a lot of things that happen currently in the Czech Republic and the way they brew beer. But some other pieces, there's things I see there and I'm like, I don't know why you guys are doing this. Like, this does not make sense to me. It's not logical. It's not good for your beer. And it's interesting to find the things that I think, just like Ashley said, that really impact the beer, and where we can make the choices to, stay inside that box and figure out what inside that box is what really makes the beer what it needs to be with the current brewing methods we have now. But it's wild to think about how they were making beer, and some people, I love when people try to recreate those, but it's almost impossible in some ways. It's interesting to think about, but I think you have to pick and choose what of tradition you're adhering to. And I think we have technology that can make better beer than they made in the 1800s too. Like,
Oh yeah.
and we should make better beer. Like that's
I would
that's
hope,
Yeah. Ashley, you want to jump in there? No?
I mean, yes, but no.
Okay. That's yeah. Jeff, how close do you pay attention to modern ingredients? To the question of well, what's the new hop of the moment, or have you messed around with craft malt? How much are you paying attention to that for some of your beers?
On the hop side, very little.
Yeah.
I have some legacy hop contracts that have kept my classics in order for a very, very long time. So it's kind of funny too. I'll have a brewer come in and give me a can of the pale ale or IPA, and they'll be like, it was hopped with GW 75629, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking
your
about.
Your phone
dude.
number? Like, what's
I just learned the word mosaic, so.
I do know that one. But
it's
what I'm
tile
saying
art.
is,
That's what it is. It's tile art. Yeah.
Like our beers, I guess my ingredients I try to keep pretty classic. Thinking about this conversation, and I've had conversations with brewers who started making beer back in the mid '80s, and just they're like, you talk about problems, and they're like, oh, we had problems like you couldn't just call somebody up and get hops the next day, or get grain the next day, or get yeast the next day, or even talk about beer yeast, period.
Yeah.
And so I think that, like Ashley said, we have science, and science has done a lot for being able to make the beers that I like to make. But paying attention to like newer hop varieties or things like that. Some of the grain stuff I do, but again, I like classic stuff. So that's what I use, and that's what I, with the equipment that I have and the ingredients I have, I try to make the best beer that I possibly can that fits to what my interpretation of a certain style of beer is, or what I've tasted when I've traveled and things like that.
When I look back through history books and I think about the early brewers that developed styles when they didn't have names for things, and they were still thanking the gods for fermentation and all of that. And I think about where we are now with, so the Czech came up that way, and certainly Germany, and even 1800s US with a lot of the grains and everything. And now I'm looking at the craft malt that is starting to, the small maltsters that are coming up, or some of the small indigenous grown hops in various states. Maryland just found a native to Maryland hop not too long ago, Monocacy. There's obviously the Pacific Northwest is growing quite a bit as well. Do you see a future for new lagers based on ingredients that are coming up now, or that are available now?
I know what you guys think. I guess I've never thought about it like that because I'm always kind of looking backwards at what has been done,
Yeah.
and then interpreting that the way that I can and with the current ingredients and things that I have to make things. But I'm sure I think about my friends in the UK who started wanting to make West Coast IPA. And, most British maltsters, their palest malt wasn't pale enough for what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But now those maltsters make extra pale malt or things like that. So they're now, their beers are really mimicking what's done over here. A little different because a lot of dry yeast. But, maybe there's a possibility for that. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Since I'm in the Pacific Northwest where we grow a lot of hops, I think when you look at hops and new hop varieties, and even some of these hop products that people are using now, most of them are geared towards hoppy beers. So, I think when that comes, I've done this series of more like a German-style Pilsner that I'll hop with like an IPA hop. And it's kind of fun to do that, partially because I'm not dry hopping it, I'm just doing it on the hot side. But I don't think you can really, it's harder to make, say, if you want to make a very traditional style lager, it's hard to do that with some of the newer hop varieties that are coming out.
Yeah.
There are some great varieties. I'm a huge champion of the Willamette hop, which used to be used.
Everybody is nodding along with you.
Budweiser, and
I'm sorry, two of the three are nodding along
The
with
Bud
you.
hop, yes.
Yeah.
it's a great lager hop, and it was grown and they're like hopefully going to keep planting it, but it's like one of those hops that let's get away from the, all these experimental ones. Let's, kind of try to revive some of these varieties that were really cool hops and really great hops that people are going away from. And those are the good lager hops, I think, that are grown in the U.S. anyway. So,
Ashley?
Yeah, for me, lager is simultaneously very much yeast-driven and then simultaneously not very much yeast-driven. And I mean that, Kvike does not make lager. I don't care. Anybody can be like, it tastes just like a lager.
That?
It doesn't. It just does not. Stop trying to fool yourself. Lager is yeast driven by lager yeast. So what I mean by that is, to me, when I think about lager, and I've said this a million times, is I think of the absence of yeast character. And so you're really wanting to make hops and malt shine, and whatever those hops and malt are, I'm actually not that concerned about it. Now, if you're going to start to call it, German-style pills, I have a certain expectation of what that means, but I think other than that, if you're not going to call it something traditional, it can use any ingredients, but the main thing about lager is lager yeast, and reducing the amount that yeast has an impact on the rest of it. Your Kolsch yeast does not make lager, your blonde ale is not a lager.
No.
Lager is based on lager yeast, and once you take that out of the equation, just call it what it is and make a really good cream ale. Or make a really good blonde ale. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the biggest sticking point is trying to make fake lager and trying to call it lager. The rest of it, use whatever you want to, but lager yeast is lager yeast.
And there's something to be said for, as a writer and somebody who tastes a lot of beers and, I judged beer competitions and everything, I struggle with the language with lagers a lot of the time because there isn't always a lot of descriptors that, without myself repeating myself over and over and over again. What are some of the phrases that you all are tired of hearing about when it comes to describing your beers? Eric? Oh, Lisa immediately was like, microphone up, my God.
Yeah. The crispy boy thing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm over it.
Agreed.
Crispy, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only that's
crispy
what
across the
immediately
board.
comes to mind. Yeah.
Everybody stop calling them crispy.
I understand why people use it. It makes sense, but it's so much more than that. Even
not all lagers are crispy.
Right,
No.
exactly. Yeah, even ones that I think are crispy. There's other. I think you can use, more of the effervescence, more dryness. There are words you can use to talk about what you're trying to get at with crispy instead of saying that. But But I agree with you. It's hard to sometimes find all those words. But yes, I think we're a unanimous 4 on no crispy bar.
I got one. I think.
Yeah.
Cold IPA.
Hot lager.
I'm like,
Where's
Hot
Kevin?
lager.
Where's Kevin at? Hot lager.
Where?
Poor Kevin
Don't
is
you mean
not here to
IPL?
defend
What
himself.
happened to
He's
that?
pouring
Oh, yeah, it
beer
doesn't
at this
sound as
fest right
cool.
now.
I
Okay,
don't know.
as someone who has dealt with the cold IPA thing, and it's
Dealt
no,
with
it's,
it.
Thing.
well, of
You should
people
have to
that-
deal with
man.
it.
Dealt
So
and thing.
It's not.
Welcome to couples therapy.
It's
This
using.
is-
Okay, the whole thing with the cold IPA, it's using an adjunct in the process. So you're using either rice or corn with a beer. It is to showcase the hops. So you want to that's the whole point of it, and it's lager yeast fermented warm. It's not like amber like a IPL is or anything like that, and it drinks more like an IPA. So anyway, that's
I
end of
like that
story.
it makes people really mad.
Yeah, it really does.
It has more in common with IPA than milkshake does, so I'm here for it.
I've tried to suggest it for a collab and been told like fuck no, like I'm not making a cold IPA. And I was like, oh, I did okay,
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
I
all
touched-
right.
I touched the
I
nerve.
didn't. Okay, we will.
Sorry,
stay with-
Rob Todd. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've made, I think, I just made a pale ale that I made with lager yeast. So are people going to get mad at me for calling it an ale? Like, it's the yeast I have available. I ferment it warm, whatever.
I don't know, are you guys mad at that? Is that it's weird. Everybody keeps shifting their stools away from you. The more.
No,
Oh yeah. Hey guys.
I think anybody can do and make whatever you want to make. It's just some things that just are more annoying than others. That's all. People are obviously going to make whatever they make. They're throwing everything that isn't an ingredient in beer into beer these days. So, what do we do? We
I don't know. What do you do?
Well, you asked the question, man.
I know. But
You're
you
like,
keep on
what
keeping on.
things
Yeah.
do we not like and what trends? And that one grinds me a little bit. So,
Where do you? Again, I'm always looking for the right question. I'm always looking for a question that can spark a conversation. And what isn't being brought up enough in the lager conversation of 2023 that you wish was getting a little bit more attention?
I mean, I have a topic that I think I'd be curious to hear everybody else's opinion on. That, with the obvious impacts that I think climate change is having on hops, especially these old world and landrace varietals of hops. For us, we use a shit ton of Saaz at our brewery, and Saaz is changing, a lot, and it's really variable and hard to get consistency on. So we're definitely at Cohesion thinking about how we're going to approach some of the newer varietals that are coming. The Czechs are seeming a little hesitant to plant new varietals and develop new varietals that try to replace Saaz if they even can, but I know some of the German hops are having similar, problems, and I've heard stories from Johann from HVG. I know he brewed with, did he brew with y'all at Heater Allen or no? I know he brewed with Ashley, and when he came into town, he was telling me, they had Hersbrucker, that they have a brewery that uses a lot of Hersbrucker, but they know that Hersbrucker is going to fade out. It's going to go away at some point. So they're trying to develop an alternative hop. They brought it to a brewery that uses, this is like a 50, 75,000 barrel year brewery, uses a ton of Hersbrucker, brought them the alternatives, and the brewery just said, no, we're still going to use Hersbrucker. I don't want this new one. So, but at some point the choice is kind of going to be made for you, and I'm curious to hear, because I think I'm trying to explore how to deal with that, and I'm curious to hear if y'all are thinking about that, or if you're kind of riding the wave of the hops that you like right now and kind of sticking with it.
Anybody?
I was just going to say it's a good question. I guess I'm not making enough of a single beer with a single hop that I'm thinking that, if that hop's gone, what am I going to do? I'm not to that point or that volume. Yeah. So, and I have hop contracts from years ago, so I've got a lot of hops to use. So I don't really have an option. But, I think it's an interesting idea, and I think that hop growers, at least in Pacific Northwest, seem to continue to look at hop varieties in the IPA sense rather than the lager sense, like you're talking Old World Nobles, things like that. Those hops are dying out. I was going to ask you what the heck you're going to do when you can't get Sots anymore, because 2.5 alpha Sots is really hard to do much with.
I got a 3.6 this year, so I was lucky.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Give me more 2.4, so.
Oh man, Hersbrucker was super low though.
Yeah.
This year.
For us, I think at some point when we look at our business model, a little bit, honestly, pretty much this entire panel is kind of a little bit on the same wavelength. When I look at, our business model and how much beer we're going to make, and that's going to we're going to try to stay a sustainable level, where, look, I love middle fruit for our pills, and if one day it doesn't taste and smell like middle fruit, then we'll have to come up with something else. But for the time being, we're small enough that I don't think, even when we say a shitload, we have no idea what a shitload is, right? I weigh a hot pellet over the top of the kettle and I go, yeah, that's good, So we are a sustainable level at the moment to continue using what we're using. And of course, in the future, that's going to change a little bit. And if those hops change to when they're not desirable anymore in that beer, we'll start looking at other things. And I think the Germans and the Czechs and stuff like that are while they're hesitant towards it, they do kind of understand what's happening. I was just in the Czech Republic, and they are starting to make a couple different hops, and they're starting to breed a couple differently together to try and create some of the same ideas. Some of them, unfortunately, are going back to the idea of what's a bittering hop versus a flavoring hop, and they're, high alpha, low alpha, when I think that, you should just use a hop that, smells and tastes the best. But I guess trying to stay at a sustainable level is part of that for us. We don't have any desire to get big. I like doing what we're doing right now. I'm not trying to run a 1 million barrel brewery.
No, nor should you. It's something does get lost in translation if you get too big, in my opinion, anyway.
And you have to start listening to your customers too. So
That's right. And the ownership and the board of directors, that come with that. As we start to wind up here, I'm curious to hear from each of you of a lager that has inspired you, continues to inspire you, that is not yours or somebody on this panel right now, that you think people should go and experience for themselves. Eric? Yes.
Anybody jump in if they've got one.
I do.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
Augustiner Hell. I mean, it's a classic. It's delicious. That's what. One of the beers that Kevin and I are going to be making all the time with our brand Gold Dot Beer is going to be a Helles, and that is the Helles that inspires us and inspired us, and that's what we're going for and trying to make something close to that.
Nice. Ashley? You don't want to answer this question?
No. I just
You're so mad.
No, more than beer. To me, as a business owner, obviously beer is extraordinarily important to me. It's what I decided to do with my life. It's what I've decided to show people who I am through a medium, and that is beer. What I am more, as a business owner, part of it is the part where I have to stretch a little bit.
Yeah.
And the places that inspire me to be better to my employees, to, continuously, kind of brush off critique, or those are the places that I'm trying to think of, the people that inspire me to be better at what I do. I think Dave Colt at Sun King is a great example of how he is to his employees and what he focuses on. We don't really have that much in common, honestly, when it comes to beer. But to me, beer, of course, is inspiring. You can find that everywhere. And Augustiner Hell is amazing. And I've had amazing beers at all these places that on this panel. But as a business owner, trying to stretch that part of me is more what I'm thinking about when I'm as a business owner. Beer I feel really comfortable with, and there's a ton of beers that inspire me because it's all time and place and people. But to me, business ownership is really the place where I try to look, and Rob, Todd, all these things. I try to look at these things from that perspective. Is a little bit harder for me. So I think that's
okay.
What I look at. Sorry,
Jeff.
it blew your panel.
Well,
I'm just
you
gonna
said no one
edit it
on
out.
this panel, but going to Bill and Ashley's place, that definitely inspired me, and I can't not
Is
say it,
Lisa
even
the
though you
only
said
one
not to.
following the rules here? Come on.
Then I will give you one
I
other
asked
one.
so little. It's
I'll give you one.
all
Hang
right.
on.
Yeah.
He gets on one Netflix special. He thinks he can just tell us what to do now.
As seen on TV.
No, I've been to Prague once, and it was with these two fine people and their business partner. And we went to a place that I'd heard of, and they only make dark Czech lager. And Ashley was just there and didn't have the same experience as we did when we were first there. But we sat at this table, and there's this old guy playing an accordion, and it was packed full of Czechs, locals, and it was just a killer time and moment. And we had this beer, and we just sat there, and we've been talking about making a beer together, and we're like, this is the beer we got to make. And we came home, and
you made
Ashley's
it.
brewed it, I don't know how many times, 3 times, 4
times, yeah.
So Atu Fleku, and they make a tamave that when I had never had it before until I was there, and I'll never forget it. It was awesome.
Eric, you have an answer?
Yeah, I think the Budvar brewery, especially the stuff that's in the cellars. When I actually just got to do this trip that's sponsored by the Ministry of Agriculture to the Czech Republic, and I did it last year, and that was drinking those beers in that cellar, the unfiltered, unpasteurized versions, right out of the tank, was certainly, we do unfiltered, unpasteurized beer at our brewery exclusively. There's something about that to me that remains an inspiration. The dark, in particular, their Tmavy Ležák off the tank was a similar thing. I'll never forget that experience, partly because we're in like a 40-degree cellar too, and some of the brewers forgot to bring a sweater, and they were shivering like crazy. So it's also was funny because I at least I thought it was funny. But anyways, those beers just drink really, really well for me and remain an inspiration as the type of beer that we're trying to make. I just wish they released more of that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of those breweries over there, especially the big ones, they package and distribute so far that they make the filtered and pasteurized versions. And I wish that more people could try those, because I know it's kind of a snobby answer too, because not everyone can get into the cellars of these places and try these beers. But definitely an inspiration for me.
One of the things that I love about this festival is the constant availability of Underberg. And before we started, there's literally an Underberg tent here. I don't think I've ever been to a beer festival where there's been a tent of it readily available. And Ashley ran out and got one for each of us right now. One of you, maybe Ashley or Lisa or whoever, talk to me about the appeal that brewers have with this nice little herb-inspired.
I'll let Jeff go on this one,
Yeah,
man. I didn't
all right.
have drink so much Underberg until I met the Bagbys. Shit.
All right, come on, Jeff. Tell us about it. Where's the appeal lie? Why?
The first appeal to me was the very first time I had it, and it's functional. This stuff works. I was in
Settles the
San
tummy.
Francisco. I had been drinking barley wine all day. I went to Tommy's and had a giant Mexican food plate and a bunch of tequila. And we went back to the Tornado, and everybody was like railing up pints. I'm like, I can't fit anything else in me. What the hell are you guys doing? And they were like, oh, you just need an Underberg. I'm like, what the hell's what?
What?
And then I drank it, and about 10 minutes later, I was like, yeah, I want that pint. I have room.
Okay.
I don't know what it does, but it works.
But it's magic.
So that was the first. Then just like, I don't know, the kind of camaraderie, the batch variation. I don't know. It's...
Is there batch variation?
Yeah, you have
We
somebody
always
has to
joke. One of my friends, every time he sets one down, he's like, that was a good batch.
Yeah, somebody
And
has
so
to say it every time. Good
just kind
batch.
of became a joke, but now I'm like, wait, you notice, you're like, wait, that one was hotter, or definitely more spicy than the last one, or that one was smooth, or wait, that one actually had some sweetness to it. You're like, I don't know. That's probably all exactly the same. I don't know.
Lisa, was it you who introduced me to the game?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. So that you look, there's a number on the bottom of each bottle, and we actually learned this from some friends in Seattle. And you get a round of Underbergs, and then you look. Whoever has the highest number has to buy the round.
Okay.
So
I'm
Yeah.
at 28.
I got 18.
55.
5.
55.
I can't read it.
18.
18. All right, so Ashley's buying.
I am. I did. I
All
brought
right.
it.
Yes,
Well,
perfect.
you did.
Here, she brought
Done.
some, so cheers.
All right, well, cheers all.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
Eyes.
That doesn't work for radio. That long stretch of silence as we're all downing
The
little
slow
bows. That
drip.
is.
That's a good batch.
Great batch.
It's a good
I
batch.
think Extra spicy that time.
Got to save our
have
caps
some spice on it.
and get the truck. Got to go through the catalog and get the truck.
Yeah.
Listen, thanks for your time and for your expertise and for sharing these really great insights here at this really cool little festival here at Duluth, Georgia.
Awesome festival. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, it's really
it's been
great.
great.
But Eric and Jeff and Lisa and Ashley, who apparently keeps receipts, thanks for thanks for doing this, and thanks everybody for hanging out. And go drink some
Yeah,
beer and
thank
enjoy
you.
it.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Seriously, get to Little Beers 4 on April 13th, 2024 in Duluth, Georgia. You should follow Good Word Brewing on social media for more information. And my thanks to the brewery and the city for the hospitality and having me down to facilitate this panel. For more immediate beer drinking fun, a reminder to get to Nashville on May 9th for Camp Rauch Beer at Brewery Brewing and Blending. It's happening during the Craft Brewers Conference, but you need not be a brewing professional to attend. Starting at 4 o'clock, come enjoy smoky delights from a dozen of the country's best Rauch beer brewers. Plus, M. Souter of Pints and Panels is going to be doing a pop-up shop, and we're even going to have some live audience podcast recordings. You can check out allaboutbeer.com online and via social media for additional details. What's a festival that you like and that you think that other people should be attending? You should let me know about it. You can email me. It's John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com, or you can tell me on Twitter at John_Holl. That's also how you can get in touch with questions, comments, guest suggestions, and whatever else is on your beer mind. A reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can check out the podcast page, the merch page, which has a lot of cool Rauch beer stuff going on there. And you can read great new content as well as the archives going back to 1979. Follow All About Beer on social media at All About Beer. And if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, you can email us at info@allaboutbeer.com, or you can help support us by going to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. Don't forget the All About Beer podcast channel. Search now, subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And as for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.